Strength is widely debated within Nikke, whether that being if Cinderella is really the strongest Nikke, or whether Rappy could solo the OG Goddess squad. However, I don't see many people talk about Chatterbox's strength or his scaling. And no, I don't count the countless slander videos made against him, and that is where today's video comes in. A video that will take a deep dive into Chatterbox's strength and prove that he isn't actually a fraud. Now, before we begin today's topic, please like and subscribe, click the bell so you never miss a video. We are slightly approaching 1,000, only 496 to go, so I'd be happy to hit that and, get monetization and then get paid on the side. But of course, when I do eventually get paid, I will not be half-assing videos, because this is also kind of my hobby, and when I do a hobby, I like doing it 100%. So even when I do get monetized, I will still be making these videos with, the highest quality. Anyway, and of course our next step is 1,000, so I'd be happy to reach it with your help. So let's answer the main question today. Is Chatterbox really a fraud that people make him out to be? Well, if you're a newcomer to the game or just some casual player who doesn't really look into the story, you'd think, yeah, he is basically a fraud since you're a newcomer. Since his win-to-loss ratio from your standpoint would be quite low. And this is from him losing to Dorothy, losing to Snow White, even being beat by Kilo. Yes, Kilo, a literal little girl in a mech suit. And only beating the OG squad when he shifted into his second form, aka Nihilista form or Dragon mode. However, we need to look at this clearly with some scaling, of course. Chatterbox, of course, is a tyrant, which immediately gets him above Loudmouth, who's town level, so large town wouldn't be really a stretch. And not only that, he is probably one of the strongest in the Queen's arsenal, and one of the Queen's strongest soldiers in the Rapture army, meaning he'd be above characters such as the Kraken, who could wrap around in an island and be described to be the size of an island. So large island level would be safe. However, let's tackle these points made against him that he is a fraud now, since that's the main premise of today's video. Now, Dorothy's encounter was widely unfair to Chatterbox. You want to know why? Due to the fact that Dorothy's power being so unknown to the government, yes, even the government, the Ark, doesn't even know about Dorothy's power that much, because she's a pilgrim, and in law, pilgrims, yes, they are stronger than regular knights. However, pilgrims have unknown technology, way more dangerous strength. That's why, in the game, they're hard to obtain, and in the lore, they only appear briefly because they're so strong. And of course, Dorothy is one of these characters that no one knows that much about because she is so secluded from people. And this is where Chatterbox comes in. Chatterbox wouldn't have been used to such weaponry, which is why his regeneration couldn't keep up with it, and he eventually fled. However, this isn't like him fleeing or pussying out. This is more of a tactical retreat, which is, less fraudulent, because this guy had nothing to fight back with. He hadn't dealt with this before, so it would be only reasonable to run away. I mean, if you see something you've never fought before, what would be your best choice? You wouldn't fight out to death, let's be realistic. You'd make a tactical retreat, and of course, think on your options. Not just, hey, let me fight this unknown being and get absolutely mollywopped. It'd be a bit more embarrassing for him to actually carry on fighting and get absolutely destroyed instead of fleeing. So there's that there. Which is why that point is just out of context and has no actual concrete reasoning other than, haha, he fled, so he a fraud, which isn't really a good point, and it's blatantly fallacious. Now onto our next point, his loss against Snow White. A much older one, mind you, not the prime Snow White, even though prime Snow White is embarrassingly weak. Current Snow White is way stronger. And this just also proves that Chatterbox, of course, keeps getting pitted against these enemies, opponents, same thing. He keeps getting pitted against these opponents who are way stronger than him. I mean, Snow White is one of the top 10 strongest. She's like top 6, if I look back on my list. And the main point, although this is just a theory that people came up with, so take it with a grain of salt, But people believe, and I believe also, that Chatterbox and Snow White got into a mutually destructive battle. By that I mean they both got damaged quite seriously. This is basically similar to Bale versus Placidusax in Elden Ring. Both were harmed greatly and had to, of course, retreat. And this doesn't make Chatterbox, a fraud, because he did crucial damage to Snow White. I mean, she is now 5% Rapture parts, if you want to go with that theory that they had a mutually destructive battle, which wouldn't be a far-fetched, to be honest. I mean, in Snow White's trailer, she's literally just seen roaming around like an empty wasteland, so her coming into contact with Chatterbox wouldn't be a surprise, since even in a trailer, Snow White managed to blow apart 4 whole buildings with a singular shot of her sniper. So even then, Snow White is just stronger and more dangerous than Chatterbox, which just makes it makes his feat even greater that he even went on par with Snow White. Which wouldn't just, make him a fraud, because he's fighting enemies which are way stronger than him. Now on to the last point. The point where he lost to a literal child, or a literal little girl, aka Kilo. The one you get in the free daily login when you play the Last Kingdom event. Now this point is also blatantly out of context and has no reasoning to it. This is due to the fact of Kilo being a quite unknown and mysterious knight, like the others in Crown's group. I know Modernia's, if it's Modernia, is that how you pronounce it? Modernia, yeah. Modernia is also another one of Crown's group, however we do know more about her since she's the main character in the beginning arcs of Nikke. But that's only the reason because she kind of fled to Crown's group, so it doesn't really count. But yeah, Crown and Kilo and even I forgot a name, but the person who's in like masts and anchors and the Helms group, this one. She also kind of is unknown. She's a bit fodder compared to the others, but like I was saying, these two have unknown powers: Kilo and of course Crown. And this is why I think Chatterbox lost, because he wasn't used to the powers that Kilo had. And even then, his dragon mode this is his first time using his dragon mode, by the way. His first time, so he wasn't even used to it. So it wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't be surprising to see him just go basically maniacal with his newfound power, because he gets a bit reckless within his fights. Now he does actually intercept the OG squad within this new form, which does, of course, give him quite a good feat, if I'm not going to lie. Anyway, now, of course, understand if you think he's a fraud because of his ambushing nihilist part. I know, I can kind of see where you're coming from. I can't really defend that. I mean, if he's going to devour Nihilister, yes, devour, because he actually does that. He eats his own species. Then he should have really done it when she was at full power. So that is kind of, iffy. So I do understand if you call him a fraud because of that. So that point is kind of correct. Anyways, let's move on to his speed. For his speed, he should semi-be relative to Indivilia, since he is superior to her. Pretty much every fucking Rapture is, every Tyrant is, because I do generally think Indivilia is the worst Rapture Tyrant ever, because she is probably the most cockiest, and her feats are absolutely just bad. So yeah, and this would of course reach him into Supersonic, since Indivilia is Supersonic, which ain't that bad, to be fair, especially in the Nikke verse. Here's the scans. Next, of course, is hacks. Now, for a Tyrant, he has a lot of hacks, probably the most. Now, he should of course have his missiles, which may or may not actually be acidic, so there's that as well. Corruption with his tail, which is actually overpowered as fuck in this verse. If you have corruption in this verse, that's a sure way to actually be top 1. Because corruption in this verse is, I think, most Nikke's weaknesses. Only 2 Nikkes within the lore have actually resisted it. 3, I guess, as well. That being Red Hood, what's the name? Laplace, and then of course Rappy Red Hood with Leviathan. I don't know if you can count that as corruption, but I'm going to count it as corruption. And if you actually, have corruption in your arsenal, you'll basically negate every Nike in the verse, minus Red Hood and Rappy, and of course, like I mentioned, Laplace. Now, of course, out of verse, out of his own verse, corruption wouldn't work unless, the opponent is finding a machine. So it's not that good, outside of his own verse, but it's still a good hacks. He, of course, has Immortality Type 2. It's not a surprise. This guy just can't die. He's been decapitated, sliced his own arm, and he's been stomped to death. And he came back after all that. So, yeah, he is pretty much immortal at this point. He also has his regeneration, which shouldn't be a surprise. This dude loves to use regeneration in his battles. Like Indivilia. Indivilia has regeneration as well, but it's a lot more slower. He, of course, has all of Nihilista's hacks, including flame manipulation and all that, since he absorbs her powers. And, of course, with that, he should have power absorption via eating Nihilista and absorbing her powers. In conclusion, Chatterbox is actually quite strong and more like the Jogo of the verse, Jogo from JJK, due to him being quite strong within their own right, but they just get pitted against characters that are preaching into the top 10 strongest, like I did the video, which you can check out in the description. And this is the reason why I call him the Jogo of the verse, because he is strong, it's just he gets pitted against ridiculously overpowered characters. Anyway, which doesn't make him a fraud or weak in any regard. Anyways, thanks for watching, and please, as always, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next one. Bye bye.